Hi everybody, it's Sid from Cool Movie Gram, your source for everything about cool film. Those of you who are new here, please hit the subscribe button, the bell icon, like my videos and all the other stuff. And for those of you who have already done that and have been tuning into my channel for quite a while now, so thank you for your support. It means a lot. And what can I say? I mean, 2025 has kicked off to quite an incredible start. It was announced by Variety that Shout Studios, aka Shout Factory, had actually acquired the rights to the Golden Princess library. Now, of course, those of you who don't know what that is, the Golden Princess was a film studio in Hong Kong that was predominantly making films throughout the 80s and 90s. They also had like a hand in some of the most pivotal films that were released in Hong Kong cinema. So you're talking films by people like John Woo, Ringo Lam, Choi Hark, and many others. So this kind of means that films that were possibly never about to see the light of day of an actual proper release in the West. I mean, we're talking films like City on Fire, you know, by Ringo Lam's Full Contact. You got The Killer. You got the Better Tomorrow trilogy. I mean, I've got these films already, but of course, and of course, Hard Boiled, and many others. I mean, we're talking about the Aces Go Places series. There's about 5 or 6 of those films, and you got all the other Ringo Lam movies like School on Fire, and you got like a bunch of like Chow Yun-fat movies. There was so much that, I mean, because they also had the rights to the Golden Princess has the distribution rights for the Cinema City catalog as well. So the fact is, all these films are going to be getting, like, you know, a possible release in well, Shout Factory being in the US. This is going to be in the West. So, you know, so this is going to be quite interesting because they will be sub-licensed to UK boutique labels. So you got the likes of like the big players being Eureka Films, you got 88 Films, Arrow Video, who have been releasing like the Shaw Scope titles, as well as Bruce Lee at Golden Harvest titles as well. So they did the box set, and then of course the individual releases. So this is big news. And also, bullet in the head, the fact that we will get like an actual official Blu-ray release of that. I mean, don't know where my Hong Kong Legends DVD is gone for that, but then I've still got the platinum edition of that. And you know, it's just, the fact is, like, some of like the best of, like, you get to see some of these amazing films kind of like in 4K or 4K and possibly 2K restorations. It's just this is a really exciting time to be a Hong Kong cinema fan, because I remember Frank Zheng at one point was saying that there was even videos put up from other YouTubers that are part of the Asian cinema circle. They had said that like these films would not get an official release because of these reasons, because apparently the company that has the rights to the Golden Princess catalog, they were very kind of like either buy all of them or the rights to all of our TV series and films, even some of the ones that won't have much of appeal in the West, or you get none. But then I think Shout Studios had actually been kind of like literally just doubling down with the negotiation, and they've actually acquired the rights for about 150 plus movies. And I am so excited. The fact that we would get like these titles, and I'm hoping, one of my like hopes of this, I mean, I know this also includes films like the Swordsman movies by Choi Hark and Ching Soo Tung, and also I think the first one was King Hu was involved in that, but the second one was the one with Jet Li, Swordsman 2. So that means that will be getting an actual Blu-ray release, completing more or less most of Jet Li's films that have been recently getting the 4K treatment. And that's just a really thing. But one of the movies I'm really hoping does get like the see the light of day with an official release would be the uncut version of Ringo Lam's School on Fire, which is kind of like one of like the greatest like triad themed movies that was kind of like very realistic and grounded, kind of like how it kind of affected a lot of like the section of society which is in schools and in high schools and stuff. And it's just such like a dark, gritty film. I've only ever seen it like a really kind of like washed out, really kind of pixelated VCD copy of this movie, but I've never seen this movie in an official HD, that being uncut, because there are some kind of like clips from that movie that had been kind of like censored out for any future releases, like whether it's remastered on DVD or even if there were, I think there was an Asian market Blu-ray, but that was really censored really heavily. Well, not heavily, but those clips were not included. But I do hope we do get an uncut version of that on Blu-ray. That would be an absolute treat. It's just one of like, I would say one of the lesser known but much lesser mentioned, but one of the best like triad movies, and probably one of like the stronger films of Ringo Lam's filmography. Now, of course, being that it's January, of course, you got my buddy Leon from HKB, Leon and Shaz. They're doing Jackie Chanuary. They do that. But then, of course, what I thought, my theme, because I want to cover Jackie Chan films in April, being that that's his birth month. Yep. So I'm thinking April would be my month where I would be covering some Jackie Chan stuff. I know my last one was a bit late because I didn't do anything in April, but you know, this time around I'm being more frequent with my videos, so there will be at least one or maybe two released a week. And my theme for January, being that we're talking about like the Golden Princess library being released, and you know, the fact that it's like literally everyone, especially within the whole kind of like community of like people who are into Hong Kong movies and whatnot, we are absolutely kind of like thrilled, because I know Frank Jeng is actually saying that he did actually record some interviews for one of the, I think the release for City on Fire. Someone's actually being interviewed for that, and I can't wait. It's just, that's just like, to be able to see that in like full kind of like 4K or even 2K, whatever, like just a really well restored kind of like transfer of that movie would be an absolute delight. And of course, Full Contact, the first ever film I reviewed on my channel, I can't wait to see that in like an actual kind of like in a pristine, you know, in getting these films getting the treatment that they deserve. And you know, this is monumental for fans of like Hong Kong cinema in the West. The fact that we're going to be getting these titles being given that kind of pristine, glorious treatment that they always deserve. The only thing that would be the icing on the cake for me now is the fact that someone actually puts out those Warner Archive titles. Now, I know the ones that, well, the Golden Harvest library that they are sitting on, which includes films like Pedicab Driver, Choi Hark's The Blade, the Young and Dangerous movies, and some of the other Jackie Chan films, apart from that, I don't know, because they hold the rights for Rumble in the Bronx, Drunken Master 2, which have already had Blu-ray releases, which were not really quite up to the mark, and even Mr. Nice Guy, which I did review, and also films like, I think Thunderbolt, they hold the rights for that as well, and First Strike. So, you know, I know that Arrow Video is actually releasing some of the Warner Brothers titles. I mean, I'm sure they can easily, you know, say to them, listen, we're releasing these titles, but trust me, Arrow Video, if you're watching this, as someone from Arrow is what, so if you know someone from Arrow Video, tell them, get the rights to their Hong Kong library as well. Trust me, you know, the fans will be delighted. Trust me, there won't be many left. I could see the first editions that you put out to those titles, they're going to be gone. You know, that's an instant money maker there. Because you know they can't just have bare bones releases. They need to be released with all the special features, the bonus features, like the content, and of course like everything else that comes with these prestige releases. Now, of course, because it's January, so let's just go. I was went off on a bit of a tangent there. Because it's January, I'm not doing Jackie Chanuary. I'm doing JOHN-WOOARY. So that's my kind of theme for this month, which is I'm going to be covering just talks about John Woo films. And what can I start off with is Hard Boiled, which is probably one of the ones that is definitely going to be getting released by Shout and hopefully one of the boutique labels in the UK. Just imagine getting a Kung Fu Bob art cover artwork, or even Sean Longmore for some of these amazing titles. Now, we're going to be covering Hard Boiled. This is the Hong Kong Rescue custom Blu-ray that was made, fan-made one. And this is from an out-of-print Japanese Blu-ray, which was probably at one point the only HD version of the film that had been released, but it just wasn't with any English subtitles. So this guy who is making these releases just kind of put it out. And yeah, well, what can I say about this film? Now, it is, if any of you have actually watched my top 50 action movies, that's actually my number 2. So it's like, for me, it's like the second greatest action film ever made, and it is definitely one of the greatest. And yeah, this film itself is about it starts off with Chow Yun-fat, who plays Tequila Yun, who's like a no-nonsense, tough as nails cop, who during a kind of confrontation with gangsters at a tea house, his partner is killed, leaving behind his wife and kid, and a kind of a vengeance-ridden Tequila. So he wants to actually get revenge on the gun runners that are actually kind of had caused that rampage, leading to the death of one of his best friends. And so he wages war against Johnny Wong, played by Anthony Wong. And in the midst of this, there's also a triad hitman named Alan, or Alon, played by Tony Leung Chiu-wai, who, you know, is actually an undercover cop who's also working alongside Philip Chan's Inspector Pang. Well, Captain Pang. I think he's the captain. He's the captain of the police, the chief of the police, and he's you know, trying to bring down the same gangsters. But eventually, their paths cross, where they have to eventually form an alliance, you know, team up, you know, do the Brotherhood the same JOHN-WOO way, and bring down the bad guys, leading to some amazing fights, ballistic action, explosions, body count, and everything involved. Yeah, I mean, this film is just like, to be honest, for me, Hard Boiled is like a monumental action film. This was the final film that John-Woo had actually filmed in Hong Kong. This is prior to leaving for Hollywood to direct his American debut, Hard Target, with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And this was pretty much like just his kind of farewell to the city of Hong Kong. So because he'd done, like, you know, he was a much loved filmmaker, very revered. I mean, even so much so that, like, when they were filming the opening action sequence at the tea house, because of like the noise that the just the fake guns were making and all the bullets and all the commotion that was being on set, the local residents had actually complained to the police, and they said that, you know, there's all this noise going on. When the police officers actually arrived at the actual scene, they saw what was going on, and when they found out it was actually John-Woo who was actually making a movie with Chow Yun-fat, they were like, listen, we love your movies, so don't worry, just carry on. Just imagine that. And I know that tea house has actually now been is now no longer there, and yeah, it's like, that's just like how revered John-Woo was, and in Hong Kong, and he still is. And yeah, I mean, this film himself, he kind of came up with the idea. He wanted to do something about like the he was not happy with the fact how gun runners in Hong Kong were pretty much getting away with, like, without any kind of like repercussions, and it seems like the police were powerless to do them. I mean, originally the film was meant to have been a kind of like dark, gritty, kind of like Sidney Lumet kind of like, you know, suspense thriller, you know, with not as much ballistic action, which you know, Tequila Yun, who's Chow Yun-fat's character, was meant to be this kind of like a hard-nosed detective, police officer who's actually after a serial killer who's actually poisoning baby food, which was originally which was the idea by Barry Wong, which was supposed to be played by Tony Leung, because that was actually based on an actual real case that happened, like, I think it was in the late 80s, early 90s in Hong Kong, where, you know, this sick individual was actually doing that. He was kind of like poisoning baby food, and many kind of like babies had actually kind of, unfortunately, you know, lost their lives prematurely. But then, because of the sensitive subject matter, and they thought, you know, this is it's not very tasteful. It's a bit kind of like, you know, something, you know, veering into like category 3 kind of like territory. They thought, why not do something along the lines of, you know, something more current? But then Philip Chan had actually given the idea to John Woo and screenwriter Barry Wong. This was actually one of the last films that he had actually written before passing away, because the film was dedicated to his memory. Had actually come up with this idea because Philip Chan, who plays the superintendent of Captain Pang in the film, he was actually an actual superintendent for some time in the police. So this is why nearly every Hong Kong film that he's been in, he's always played a police officer, and like he's always been kind of typecast into that role. I mean, with the exception of his role in Jean-Claude Van Damme's Double Impact, where he played like an actual gangster. I mean, most of the time, especially when it's a modern day action movie, Philip Chan's always played a police officer. And he just kind of looks like it because he was well known as the superintendent of the Hong Kong Police, well, the Royal Hong Kong Police, as it was called prior to the 1997 handover. And he'd given this idea because he was actually in charge of the undercovers who were actually working. So, you know, this is what they were going to. And of course, he did cover some of the similar themes about undercovers in Long Arm of the Law Part 2, which he had wrote the first one and the second one. And he thought, why not do something about an undercover and what they go through and everything, and you know, have some kind of like, you know, bring that, and we could also kind of bring in the whole idea about like, you know, the gun kind of smuggling and what the triads are doing in terms of like running guns in Hong Kong, and we can kind of create like an action movie around that. And then John Woo, along with Barry Wong and all, they kind of like collaborated and they gave us this story. And what can I say? I mean, the film itself was a moderate hit in Hong Kong. It wasn't really that well received in terms of like box office receipts, especially in comparison to like his more successful films. I mean, his previous film, which was Once a Thief, which you know, which was a really big hit, but then, you know, following like the unfortunate box office disappointment that that was Bullet in the Head due to like many reasons, which, I mean, now it's one of the most like important films of John Woo's career, definitely one of his best. And, you know, it's a very kind of like strong, you know, upon retrospectives, because the film was actually done better in the West. Same with Hard Boiled. This film was a lot more successful in like Western markets and throughout Asia. It was actually kind of like well received, and it kind of like, you know, a lot of people are saying this was like his resume for Hollywood, but then he had actually already become like a sought after director for him to make movies in Hollywood, even after like the success of his last collaboration with Choi Hawk, which was The Killer. And you know, that itself had kind of like spawned off a lot of kind of influence, and Hard Boiled was just like pretty much the icing on the cake for like Hong Kong, for, you know, for John Woo's Hong Kong filmography. I mean, yeah, I mean, what I loved about it is like you had like a lot of kind of collaboration from other people. You had like Philip Kwok, who's like, you know, Shaw Brothers veteran, who's one of the 5 deadly venoms. I think he was Venom number 4, who's the lizard. Yeah, and he had actually done a lot of those. So he's like a very well-versed martial artist. He was a kind of a well-known actor from that period, who had worked with Chang Che, who was John Woo's mentor in a way in the industry. Because John Woo had actually worked as a assistant director before becoming a director of himself on John Woo's films, on Shaw's productions for Chang Che. And then you also had Tung Wai, who of course recently we saw in the movie Stuntman, who's kind of been immortalized in like movie history because of his appearance at the start of Enter the Dragon as Bruce Lee's student. And you know, both, I think they had like some involvement in some of the action choreography as well. because Tung Wai had actually worked and done the action choreography for John Woo's A Better Tomorrow, so he did the stunt coordination and everything as well. And the fact that he was, they're both playing roles in this film. So Philip Kwok playing Mad Dog, who's like a loyal henchman to Anthony Wong's Johnny Wong, who's kind of like a man who lives with a strict principle and a code, but he's just still a ruthless killer, and he's just a total badass. And then you have Tung Wai, who's playing like a stool pigeon, giving intel to Tequila Yoon, who's known as the Little Fox, or Foxy as he's known in the English dub. And the fact that you had them, you had Philip Chan, you had, it's just, and Theresa Mo, who plays like Chow Yun-fat's on and off girlfriend, love interest, who's also a police officer, which was quite interesting because you get to see this is probably one of the first times where you see in a John Woo film where a female is actually playing like quite a strong, confident character, like who's not like someone who's kind of like a damsel in distress. Or just a side character, but she's kind of like providing kind of like more like a backstory and more development for the actual story, because you kind of get to see how, as good of a cop that, as dedicated as a policeman that Tequila Yoon is, he kind of gets to the he always gets his superiors onto his superior's bad side, but he's also kind of like not really a perfect human, because his relationship with his girlfriend is not really doing so well, and they're kind of going through a rough period. Even though he wants it to work, but then then also at the same time you can tell that she's not like someone who's just always kind of beckoning or waiting on someone to save her, or just someone just there to kind of look pretty, because Theresa Mo herself is like she's a very acclaimed actress. She's kind of proven herself to be a very competent kind of like leading lady. She's been a very kind of like strong character actress. She's been able to give versatile performances, win awards and all that as well. And it just kind of her involvement and all the cast that's involved, even though Anthony Wong apparently wasn't happy with working on the movie, says he did not really enjoy his time working with John Woo, but he was an effective bad guy. He felt like he didn't know what to do, and he felt like he had like a very kind of thin character. But then, it's an action movie, and he was just the villain. And but what we got was just a kind of like a frenzy of non-stop action. You just had loads of like just incredible set pieces. From the opening sequence in the tea house, you have like an incredible two shootouts all in one, where you see Johnny Wong's gang going into Uncle Hoy's hideout, kind of like stash, to kind of like raid his arsenal, and that kind of like then kind of like having a pause, and then another shootout starts when Tequila Yoon comes to blow the party up on a bloody on a harness kind of strapped with a rope, just swinging through with a machine gun, just blasting away bad guys, and blowing up people like henchmen that were on motorbikes and everything. And everything is pieced together. Then you also have like Michael Gibbs, who's like a jazz musician who did the music score to this film. It just kind of adds to everything. It's just so poetic at the same time, the way that the movie moves together. And then of course you have the amazing, you have shootouts here and there. You have some amazing action, especially at the end, which is almost like a 35-40 minute just like long shootout in a hospital, which was an actual former like Coca-Cola plant, which they had actually kind of like changed into like make it look like a hospital. And it was just like absolutely incredible. It's just like full of like some just there's a really high body count, but then at the same time it's just great ballistic action. This is all done without any CGI or any kind of like computer trickery like that they would probably do now. Considering the explosion at the end where Chow Yun-fat was actually running through, grabs onto a wire and just uses that to kind of like say land safely at the end. That was done for real, where Chow Yun-fat had actually burnt the back of his head, like the hairs on the back of his head had actually been burnt. from like running from, and he was pretty much like shooken up and saying that this man John Woo wants to kill me. But then when he saw the movie, he said, "Oh, that looked incredible. When can we make another movie?" Which sadly, unfortunately, has not happened yet. And I don't think we will, because they don't need to, because they've had such a great legacy. I mean, the films that they've made together, I mean, they've been kind of carved, and pretty much they've earned their place in cinema history. And and even that whole kind of stunt where Chow Yun-fat grabs onto the wire, I mean, that was pretty much, that was homage was given to that scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, where at the end, where Chris Pratt, who plays Star-Lord, is actually running away from the exploding ship, and he just grabs onto like a hose, or like a kind of a pipe, like a rubber pipe thing, or wires, whatever. He just holds on, runs onto it, and he just tries to run out of the exploding kind of ship. And that was pretty much like a nod to Hard Boiled. Even the scene where they use the song No Sleep Till Brooklyn, where it's kind of like they're in a corridor, and it's just literally, it's done as one shot. I mean, I could tell that it just looks too neat to be one shot. I know it was actually pieced together like digitally, but John Woo, that was also a nod to John Woo's Hard Boiled, where you see Tony Leung and Chow Yun-fat had actually kind of like gone through the corridor. There's just one long take where they're just kind of like literally just shooting through all these bad guys, and like, everything exploding and whatnot. They get into an elevator, and then they kind of like, it continues when the elevator opens on another floor, and they're just kind of like blasting through some bad guys here and there. It was all done in one long take, and that was pretty much homaged by James Gunn in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 as well. And I mean, this is like, probably one of the most pinnacle. I mean, even if you're not a fan of Hong Kong cinema in general, if you're not into Hong Kong movies, Hard Boiled is one of those films where you need to kind of like, you need to watch. This is just to appreciate the beauty and just the kind of like the technical mastery that John Woo possesses in his films. He was on a complete different level. Now, you have got great filmmakers that do great action scenes. I mean, you have Ringo Lam, who was R.I.P., who was an absolutely incredible technician. Even Choi Hark is a great technician as well. And then you also had, you have people like Johnny Toll, who's absolutely incredible. But for me, it's like, even as great as those guys are, but when it comes to like technical mastery, I don't think anybody comes close to John Woo, especially in the level of Hong Kong. I mean, Hong Kong's like filmmaking, because when it comes to the action sequences, the way that he's done, I mean, Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung and them, like, they have their own kind of like approach to it as well. They have their own style that's different, but the way that John Woo does a John Woo action movie, it's just, it elevates. It's just a different level of class. Even the amazing editing, the camera movement, it's just absolutely incredible. If you look at some of his earlier films, it's just, the editing is just done just seamlessly well, where everything kind of flows together in a John Woo film like it's like poetry. It's like it's like a kind of like a kind of a symphony, where every section has like a different feel, and like everything kind of like just blends together to create, like, I mean, this is an action masterpiece. Hard Boiled is an action masterpiece. And you know what, it's just, I hope this does get like a great release in the UK, and now that Shout Factory has kind of like opened these floodgates, and I hope this leads to more happening, because again, these films, they require justice. The only justice that would be a great kind of fully restored 4K restoration of the movies that have been acquired. And for a lot of fans to kind of appreciate, because one thing I've actually noticed as well is just that ever since a lot of older films, both Hollywood, Hong Kong and whatnot, have all been given like these 4K restorations and releases, like these really good kind of like remasters, the films look absolutely incredible. And when compared to like when you watch those older films in comparison to newer films, you realize how well these films were made. You know, how superior. I mean, I personally, just my opinion in general, I mean, these films are, you know, when you look at them, they look and they sound and they're just, you know, a lot better than a lot of more of the newer, more popular films that are coming out today. And I'm thinking, that just shows a mark of quality. Right, well, you know, I guess that was my kind of talk about, you know, my first video for JOHN-WOOARY. And yeah, I will be doing some more, maybe some more talks about his some other videos to talk about his stuff and his work. But yeah, of course, I mean, this is a Hong Kong Rescue, you know, fan-made custom. And it comes like, of course, this comes with the 2.0 audio, and it comes with, you know, interviews, audio commentaries by John Woo, Terence Chang, Roger Avery, and critic David Kerr. You got a Bay Logan commentary on there, which is from the Dragon Dynasty release. You got the making of Hard Boiled, interviews with John Woo, Terence Chang, Tony Leung, Philip Kwok, Philip Chan. You got the entire extended Taiwanese cut, and John Woo student film. You have the Hard Boiled trailer montage, and you got loads of other things as well that are included on this disc. But I hope to see more, you know, I hope to see some great features. And if any of the UK ones are actually going to be releasing these movies, like when they get sub-licensed out, I'm just saying this right now, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. If I can get involved and maybe do some bonus features or whatnot, I'd be more than happy to kind of to contribute, because these films, whether it's the John Woo films, the Ringo Lam movies, and a lot of the Cinema City and Golden Princess kind of library, I mean, this is like pivotal work from Hong Kong cinema, which, you know, these are the films that kind of shaped not just Hong Kong action movies, but even global, like, action cinema as a whole. It has, it has its DNA from a lot of Hong Kong action movies, and I cannot wait to delve into those films, do my videos on those releases, and of course talk about the 5-star magnitude of films like Hard Boiled having finally, hopefully it'll be a great 4K restoration, The Killer with a great 4K restoration, and of course the complete A Better Tomorrow trilogy, giving that great treatment as well, and as well as all the other ones. But then, I can't wait. This is just like me kind of like just fanboy nerding over all this stuff right now, so I can't wait. Anyways, let me know which titles, apart from like the John Woo movies and whatnot, and which titles are you hoping that also get like a great release from the Cinema City library? And yeah, just let me know. I mean, this is just an exciting time, and yeah, I would love to hear more. You know, let's just hope they do it right. Okay, well, that was me. Yeah, I've had my kind of like little kind of fanboy kind of like moment in terms of like the Golden Princess Hong Kong cinema stuff. Yeah, and I'll see you on my next video. Peace out, have a good one, and stay blessed and keep watching.